and Red still had mid. No, if someone had at least just decapped the mid, this would have kept going. But I mean, all their units, because they were just fighting so hard, all their units were tied up where they were.
I look at the numbers, guys.
Yeah, with all of Blaster's requisition, you'd think he'd have bothered to build something else.
Look at the numbers, guys. Look at how many troops Gunsmurfidus has. He's still practically over 6 squads of guys on the field.
I see that. Even with all his requisition, he kept himself squatted up. He kept himself retreating. He played it smart and conservative. Holy Hammer, I mean, even with what he has, he was still playing fairly conservatively because you can't have that many troops at the end as Eldar without playing conservatively. Or at least knowing when to run the freak away.
Oh my goodness, that was an intense game. And Blasted T2, good lord, look at his casualties. He's nearly lost everybody. Or everyone he has left is like at half strength.
I didn't ever see him really keep his population up. I mean, you'd think that with his lack of population and his amount of requisition that he'd tossed a couple tanks in the mix for a hold off or something, but you never saw him really do anything aggressive. He was like, Holy Hammer's typical second guy where he just kind of runs around capping stuff no one's paying attention to.
Yeah, well, he went for a few high-tier pop-cap expensive units in place of a lot of bodies or, a lot of bodies in a tank.
Yeah, if you want a lot of bodies in a tank, man, use the Tyranids.
Oh, man. Yeah, I would say...
If you're going Orc, man, go for war.
Tasman really got the crap kicked out of him by Holy Hammer, you gotta admit. I mean, look at him. He's even worse shape, too. He's got 2 squads at half strength, or one squad nearly destroyed. Another newbie commando squad on the field, and his commando is dead.
Well, yeah, I mean, he did rush into what's essentially a hornet's nest. I mean, the Eldar have had that place camped for a while, and even though it's not exactly right where their base is, it is a spot that they hung out a lot, and that they would draw back to whenever they couldn't cap the center point. So that's just was their bread and butter area, except for a couple of times when it was an abandoned base.
So what do you think? What did Red Team do right there that you saw?
I didn't see a lot of strategy from Red Team. They seemed very reactionary the whole time, and usually that gets you owned if the other team thinks far enough ahead. But to me, it really appeared like Blue Team was just a little weak, I guess. I mean, like they were executing good strategy, but and they were able to keep some units alive that typically for the Eldar don't live for very long, and they were even able to execute some really neat strategy. Like when he held onto that loot tank just enough to make the rest of the squad run away for Tasnaman, so that his loot tank was rendered useless, so he had to leave with it. It was a brilliant tactic. And all Red Team you ever really saw them do was to continually push, and when they noticed something was capped and they noticed kind of late, they would go and do something about it. And they played conservatively, kind of ran back and kind of kept their guys between points, but for the most part I didn't really see a lot of amazing strategy, just stay in the course, really.
Well, I mean, usually when you have 2v2 matches like these, I mean, one person will have, I mean, each person will, if they're smart enough, they'll be assigned a role. What I saw with Gunsmurfidus, he would always use heavy infantry and be behind the barriers near the center point, while Tasman would just be aggressive, while Gunsmurfidus would just be a little bit more passive. And if his ally got knocked out of the fight, then he was right there ready to go, all ready to defend defend the center point should it get decapped.
And so basically, is this a result of Holy Hammer and Blasted T2 being a little bit, both being aggressive, but not exactly holding any ground? Well, Red Team was able to hold more ground and thus stay in the fight, and win the game essentially because they held on to their points longer.
Yeah, I mean, Red Team managed to make pushes just to keep the points, whereas I mean, Blue Team, even now, still has most point map control except for the VPs. Like they didn't defend the VPs well enough, really. And I mean, Tasman had a really odd strategy of knobs and commandos. So like he had like a half stealth, half full-on melee approach, and it actually kind of complemented Gunsmurf because he had a mostly ranged with a little bit of melee mixed in there. But they had kind of like a full, as a team, kind of a full coffer of, you know, damage types.
Yeah, pretty good
Holy
class
Hammer,
balance amongst the two of
yeah.
them.
Yeah, exactly. And while they weren't super well coordinated a lot of the time, they could complement each other when it was really hurting. Despite the fact that they couldn't take out that Falcon to save their life until he, you know, Holy Hammer just suicided it.
Well, you know, they could have taken it out. They kept running away from it. I saw a lot of opportunities to destroy, like, you know, the big, annoying tank vehicles that were put in distress and were outnumbered, and they didn't have their support troops, and they just let them go away. And I found that kind of surprising on several tactics, but they're just like, hey, live to fight another day, I guess. But my personal opinion is I don't want that damn thing leveling up and coming back to bite me in the ass. I don't know, maybe that's too aggressive a tactic, but it's kind of the way I would take it. Also, just a small critique. Holy Hammer, you know, where...
Whoa.
Where?
Just got cut off.
Huh?
Say it again.
No,
You just got cut off.
oh, sorry. Holy Hammer, you usually see him running around keeping the fight going, and either him or someone else will run around capping points, kind of secretively. But what you didn't see was him abusing the speed of the Eldar. That's what they're known for, right? That they're fast and they can get there faster than anybody else. And you would have thought that while this slow and lumbering war boss was going around capping points, that maybe he would have dispatched some rangers or some kind of speedy, stealthy unit to run out and like neutralize some of these points on the way in a sort of quick hit and run fashion. I know it's difficult to try to manage several parts on the map at once, but I would have liked to have seen more of that. I think that probably would have given them advantage, because I think really just the slowness of the war boss was one of the major hindrances.
Well, especially with the Warp Spider Exarch, I mean, he can jump around. He fucking teleports, and he didn't really seem to use that in capturing VPs.